Hey everyone. So we have finished reading Number the Stars. And so I just want to have a little discussion about the whole book and where we are right now. So if you would just follow along as I go through the slides. So we're on session 15. And it says, finishing a book is a special time. We think about how things fit together and pay attention to the bits that surprised us because those bits are often sources of epiphanies. What are some of the parts of Number the Stars that you were surprised by? Well, I think the first time that I read the book, when I wasn't sure about the Nazis and the Germans taking over, I think I was very surprised that the Germans were trying to take over and eliminate and get rid of all the Jewish people. I didn't think that could possibly happen because there's just so many people. But it happened, and it was happening. And I think the other thing that I was very surprised about, just a small detail, so that was a big idea, but this small one was, and something that I learned, was that thinking about that time when Uncle Henrik used that, the handkerchief to deter the dogs. And so that was something I was surprised about. I didn't realize that that was actually something that they did. And that was a true part of our history. They did use that as a tactic to deter those dogs. So when we first started reading the book, I thought it was the Germans who had the power. Did anyone else think that? That the Germans had all the power. They were the ones that were running it. They were in these countries and trying to take over. Now I'm not so sure. I said there might be other kinds of power. So yeah, the Germans went in with their guns and tried to take people out in a way, and forcefully taking people away. But I do think that there's something else that was going on. There was another kind of power. It says, readers, today we will learn that looking at our books with the lens of power leads to all sorts of new thinking. And when you investigate who has that power, what form power takes, how you see it, and how power changes or shifts, that helps you find huge meanings in books. So think about these questions. Who makes the rules and who is in charge? So if you think about who made the rules at the time, I think when we first started reading this were the German people. We were thinking that, yeah, they're the ones that are in charge. They're making all the rules. This is how it's going to be, and they're taking over. So think about these two questions as we read out some excerpts from the story. So think about who makes the rules and who's in charge. Go home, all of you. Go study your school books and don't run. You look like hoodlums when you run. Remember that? That was early on in the beginning. Who was making the rules? Who was in charge? Sounds like the German soldiers at that time in that excerpt. Where did you get the dark-haired one? He twisted the lock of Ellen's hair. From a different father? From a milkman? So remember the time when the soldiers went into the apartment and they were looking at the kids and looking at Ellen and how different she looked. Who was in charge then? They didn't break in, but they pushed their way into the apartment and was very forceful in interrogating that family. So if you think about who was making the rules and who was in charge, I think the Germans at that time. So we've been talking about the signs of power that the Nazis have in this story. I want you to think who, after readers ask themselves who has the power, readers can then say, what's the resistance? Where is power? Where there's power, there is resistance, and people don't just give in. So remember the resistance. These were the people that Lise and Peter worked for. They were helping the Jewish people to escape to Sweden. So when you have power, there's always somebody or group of people that might disagree with what's going on. And so in this case, they were considered the resistance. These are the people that weren't going to give in. These people weren't going to come in, these Nazis, and just take over. And so the resistance was helping to combat that. So use that question to think about Number the Stars. All right? We can't compare with our partners, But these are examples of power to resist hatred and violence that we were talking about, these things that these Germans were doing, and the resistance were going in and trying to take that power away by protecting and getting these people to safety. So by asking these questions, we can realize that there are different kinds of power, that power is not necessarily a bad thing. So again, these questions, predictable questions to investigate power. Who makes the rules? Who's in charge? Who has the power? And what are the signs of that power? What is the resistance? And what is their power? Okay. So continue to ask, what's the story really about? And think about the theme, the big idea here. Okay. I think that, so it says, think now about the ways that people use their power in relationships to those big ideas. So remember we were talking about bravery as being one of these themes, and how going up against this power, if you will, to try to help people. The, more obvious signs of power is like physical restraint or physical force. So if the soldiers were taking and physically moving these people, that's a physical force. And so that shows that those soldiers are in power because of that. They're using forceful tactics. But I think it's harder sometimes to see moral power. And all along in Number the Stars, the Rosens and the Johansons, they seemed powerless. But in the end, we learn that theirs is a power stronger than the power held by the Nazis. What do I mean by that? Now think about the Rosens and the Johansons. What did they have that actually got them through? So think about this question again, or think about this statement. Think now about the ways that people use their power in relationship to those big ideas. The Rosens and the Johansons, they were friends. They were part of this and helped them through this in resistance and trying to get them out of the country. So power doesn't always mean physical force. The resistance was a powerful force as well. And they did things not using physical force, but almost a morality sense. They were trying to do good by taking these people and protecting them, taking them out of the country. Okay, so friendships. Right? Endings of books are special. We were talking about this in our Google Chats. Sometimes coming to the end of a book is really hard because you enjoy it and you really want to continue. I compare it to, it's like, the top of the mountain. You don't want to reach the top of the mountain and then just turn around and race back down. Instead, once you're there, you want to look back over the whole trail that you traveled and think about the whole trail in relation to the ending. As it takes a lot to get to the top. Just like in a book, it takes a lot to get to the end. You guys did some really hard work, and you've enjoyed the book along the way. I know in talking with some of you. So sometimes it's very difficult to come to the end of a book. It is really important to reread the endings and to think back about the whole book in relationship to the end. You need to think, how does this change my thinking about what the whole book is about? And how does the ending connect to the earlier parts of the book? So these are all things that we have done throughout our journey through Number the Stars. I hope you enjoyed this book. Historical fiction is a fun genre to read, and I hope you continue reading different historical fiction books throughout your life. All right, my friends, have a great day.